Hi, it's Kathy here, and today we're going to be looking at Photoshop for the first time. We've worked mostly in Illustrator up to this point, and now we're going to be working with some actual photographs, the photographs that you took of your 5 tight roughs. So I'm going to show you how to take those photographs and make them look their best in Photoshop and get them into the size and format that we need to put them in the InDesign template in next week's step on the assignment. So we're going to start off in Photoshop here by clicking File, Open, and you're going to navigate to your file, and I think that's the one I want right there. Sure enough, there we go. I've chosen a set of student tight roughs to practice on today or to demonstrate on that were drawn by hand, because some of you may have squares that were drawn by hand rather than the template. And even if you use the template, sometimes when you're working, your hands get a little sweaty or something, your paper gets a little wrinkly, and when you take the photograph, your camera or your cell phone or whatever you were using may not be completely square with the plane of the paper. So there are lots of reasons why you may end up with squares that aren't quite straight, the horizontals aren't quite horizontal, the dimensions may be a little warped, and I'd like to show you how to fix that in case you have that problem. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look a little bit at the differences between Photoshop and Illustrator. Photoshop looks a lot like Illustrator. It's easy to be in one program and forget and think that you're in the other, I've found. But Photoshop is a bitmap program. In other words, images in Photoshop have a size, and I'd like to draw your attention to the Image tab on the top menu here. We're going to click that, and we're going to go down to image size and take a look. We're going to click that, and it's going to show us the size of this image. And here you see a little detail out of the center of the photograph here. And first we're going to look at the resolution. The resolution is how many pixels per inch and are in the file. And then, of course, that in itself doesn't tell you how much information. You also have to know how many inches there are for those pixels per inch to exist in. So those are the 3 things we're going to concern ourselves here in this options window: the resolution and the dimensions, the width and height. Here they're in inches. We could take them into a lot of different things: percents, pixels, millimeters, points, but we're going to keep these in inches because I happen to know that the InDesign template that we're eventually going to put these little 5 little tight roughs into is built in inches, and so these are finally going to go into little InDesign squares that are about 2 inches square, and these, if you followed my instructions, are somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 inches square. So we can afford to get them quite a bit smaller. We'd like a much higher resolution. Since resolution depends on 2 things, or I should say file size depends on 2 things, resolution and dimensions, that means that if you have a really low resolution like 72 dpi, which is great for online since it's the resolution of most people's screens, but it's yucky for printing. It makes your files look very pixelated and cheap when you print at 72 dpi. For printing, we'd like something more like 300 dpi, and we'd like to eventually be able to print these files. So I'm going to artificially just raise my resolution to 300. And you'll see that my image size, my file size here, went from 22 megabytes up to close to 400 megabytes by doing that. But I didn't add any information. I can't, right? Unless I go back and take a different picture. What I can do, though, is sacrifice some of this size here. These dimensions are much bigger than we need. Photoshop, of course, is measuring the whole piece of paper here, or the photograph size of the whole piece of paper, and it's saying at 72 dpi I could give you a 45-inch photograph of this. We don't need that. Let's say if this were an 8 by 10 picture, if this were a 10-inch high photograph, it would still be over 7 inches wide, and that's more the size of a normal sheet of paper, plenty big for us. Now my dimensions have gone, or my image size has gone down from the original 22 megabytes to about 18. In other words, I had plenty of huge dimensions to trade away for some extra resolution. So I'm happy there. You'll notice that the size jumped a little bit. It got just a little bit smaller, but we're only seeing here about a third of the information that Photoshop has for this file. So the file is actually very highly resolved and will be very good for printing. Most of you probably took your photographs with cell phone cameras, and they are typically set to, unless you've messed with the specs, they're typically set to take photos at 72 dpi because they typically think you're going to put this photograph on Instagram or Facebook or some online format where people will see it on a screen. But on a good camera, they will often trade away that low resolution and give you a high dimension like that. So you may find that you have plenty extra inches that you can sacrifice. If you find that your camera is taking photographs that are just very, very small, say at 72 dpi, they're only about 2 inches tall, then the only cure, if you can't raise the resolution of your camera, the only cure is to borrow somebody else's camera to take these. We have to have some resolution in a bitmap program. You'll remember that Illustrator, of course, is a vector program, and so all the shapes and value gradients and everything are created by algorithms. But in Photoshop, I'm going to just zoom down into this by going Command +++ to my file. In Photoshop, you'll see that it's trying to show us exactly what this student's hand did when he rubbed a crayon, or she rubbed a crayon or a colored pencil or something over the surface, right? It's showing us where edges are soft and where they're crisp. There's no way that you can draw up an algorithm for the kinds of information that photography can give us, right? So we need bitmap programs for this kind of really complex information. And Photoshop is the bitmap program that works with Illustrator, part of the Creative Cloud suite. So now what we're going to do is separate these. We want to eventually end up with 5 different JPEGs. So I hope that by now you've got Photoshop installed, that you've brought up your own photograph by navigating to wherever you stored it through the File Open menu, and that you're ready to break it up into 5 different JPEGs ready to go into your final piece. So if you can, play along with me as you do this. You might want to watch a little bit of the video, stop it, and then go practice this in Photoshop yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is select the part of this document that we want using this rectangular marquee tool. So I'm going to grab that tool from the tool menu. It gives me a little cursor, and I'm going to take that tool and make sure that I get a little bit extra here so that I don't cut anything off. And I'm going to, once I've got it selected like that, I'm going to hit Command C to copy it. It will be Control C if you have a Windows computer. Now I'm going to ask Photoshop for a new file, and by default it will give me a file exactly the size of whatever is on my clipboard. Great. I just copied my image to it, and so I should be able to just go Command V and voila, paste my image right in. That's a really easy way of getting your image into a separate file. So now I have 2 tabs here, one for my original tight roughs and an untitled file which I can save when I'm happy with it. I'm not quite happy with this yet. First of all, it isn't very straight, is it? Not a bit. So we're going to take care of that. We're going to select the whole thing by going Command A, or you could go to the Select menu and say Select All, either one, but Command A or Control A, if you're on a PC, will select everything. And then we're going to go to the Edit menu and transform this a little bit. We're going to go Edit, Distort. I'd like to rotate it a little bit. It looks to me like it's crooked down here, but the problem is it isn't crooked up here. It's pretty straight up here. So I am actually going to distort this thing by grabbing one of the handles and pulling that corner over a little bit and then letting go. I just clicked and dragged until this edge looks pretty straight to me. Now it looks pretty straight to me. And I'm going to do the same with this edge, only this time I'm going to pull it down. And you could think of this, of course, it's called distort, edit distort. I think of it, though, as undistorting the piece because it was intended to be square, and now it's a lot squarer. So when you're happy with your distortion, if you need one, and if you don't on this one, you may need it on some other one, you're going to hit return to accept the distortion. I'm just about to hit return. Watch what happens. So did you see that the little handles went away, the little handles at the edge of my shape? In Photoshop, you can't do anything while those handles are there. You have to accept whatever transformation you just made before you can go on. And this can be very annoying sometimes. Sometimes the handles are there on some very small thing that may even be off your screen, and you'll feel dead in the water because you'll feel as if the program has crashed. That's one thing to look for in Photoshop. While a transformation is in progress, you must accept it before you can go on to do anything else. And this will feel a little unnatural to you if you've worked in Illustrator a lot, which you have, of course, because in Illustrator, we can do all sorts of things while object is selected, right? Okay, now we've got what we call the marching ants, the selection marquee, going around this thing. I'm going to Command D just to get rid of that annoying effect. And now I'm going to go to the crop tool and crop my document here. I want to get rid of those edges because I want something that will go exactly into my, playing with this a little bit, into my InDesign template. I want to get that little black thing here, but I don't want to get the black pencil line around the edge. I'm going to go ahead and accept this crop by hitting return and see what I think I've got. Still just a little bit of a pencil line on that edge. If I am worried about that, I might go back and fix it. I know that this is going into a white InDesign template, and I think any ugly black lines that appear on some edges and not on others are going to be distracting. So I may just go back in there and I can go Command +++ in order to really hone in on this edge and very, very carefully crop off any offending black lines. Hopefully I'm going to go minus now. I might have been able to get that just a tiny bit closer too. Just a tiny bit. Sometimes you have to really zoom in order to get the kind of control you need to cut the thing off. Oops, there we go. Just where you want it. I'm going to minus it out now so I can see where I am. I'm going to hit return again. Okay, so the crop tool in combination with that edit, transform, distort command has given me a version that is very square and has a nice clean edge. Now what about the color? The color, of course, is the best that my camera could show me under the lighting circumstances that I had with the tools that I had, or that this student had. But let's look and see if Illustrator has any ideas here. Sometimes if you click Auto Tone, whoa, that increased my contrast, my value contrast a little bit. You'll get something that is just a little bit better automatically. The engineers who designed Photoshop did an awful lot of research on the kinds of errors people tend to make. You can also try auto color, and that didn't seem to make a very dramatic effect. But I think that I like what happened with auto tone. I'm going to Command Z to undo auto color, and I think I'm going to leave it like that. There are many, many other adjustments that you can make under the image menu choice there. So you can, one thing that I use a lot is brightness and contrast. I often find that turning the brightness up helps the look of a file. Although I'm pretty happy with the brightness they gave me, I often find that turning the contrast up helps with the look of a file too, and I think I might keep it with a little bit higher contrast there. Turning the contrast down, of course, tends to give you a file that looks a little bit grayer, and turning the brightness down has a fairly predictable effect. This can actually be very nice if you've overexposed something. But in the case of this file, I think I'll leave brightness at 0 and turn contrast up just a little bit to make it pop a little bit more. So I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to check the size of my image one more time. Image size. I'm doing this over and over because I want you to get used to going image size. These are some of your most important commands. I now have I'm happy with my resolution of 300. My width and height are just a little bit under the original 3 inches because I cropped it just a smidgen. But my target file, my InDesign file, is only 2 inches. And so I know that I've got plenty of information. I'll be shrinking this down yet again a little bit when I put it into InDesign. So I'm happy with that. Anything that's over 2 inches and approximately 300 in resolution will give you plenty of information to look great in your InDesign file. So you're going to aim for something in the order of 2 or 3 inches and a resolution of 300. Okay, so I'm going to OK that out, and now I'm going to save this file. I'm going to click Save, Save As, and I'm going to call this Sketch 1. And I don't really want to save it as a Photoshop file. This PSD stands for Photoshop Documents. I want to save this as a JPEG because I don't need all the different layers and everything. This will decrease its size, and it's also something that we can embed in a discussion in Canvas, right, which is very important. So I don't want to save it in my downloads. I think I'll save it in my design PowerPoints. Okay, I'll save it in there. Wherever you save it, make sure that it is in a place where you can easily get at it again and will be able to remember. I'm going to make sure it has a large file here. You always want, for any kind of print work, you want baseline standard. And I'm going to take all the resolution I can get and save it like that. Okay, we're going back now to the original file, and I'm going to do this again to give you another chance to walk through all this if you didn't catch it all the first time. You don't have to watch this again if you feel that you've got everything you need, but if you're a little bit iffy on this still, let's just do this quickly one more time. I'm going to start by taking the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to select one that's a little bit cattywampus here so that it's pretty good practice in making these edits. We're going to go Command or Control C to copy it. We're going to ask for a new file. By default, Photoshop is going to give us the clipboard size, which is exactly what we want. And we're going to go Command V to paste that in. And again, I could rotate the image here, but I can see that it's almost square on this corner and very, very cattywampus on this corner. So the rotation itself is not going to be enough. Incidentally, if you did want to rotate the image, that command is under Image, Image Rotation, and you could go down to an arbitrary rotation and say, I want, say, 1 degree counterclockwise. And you could try that, but I know in advance that although that's going to help, it straightens out this corner very nicely, but it just doesn't really help that much with this corner. So what we're really going to have to do now is select everything, because Photoshop will only let us edit things that are selected. So I'm going to hit Command A to select everything, and you see the little marching ants going around it. I'm going to hit Edit, Transform, Distort. And again, we get these little corners. I'm pretty happy with this corner. We get these little handles. I'm going to pull this one over, add a little bit of a smidgen there, pull this one up a little bit. I'm trying to straighten the thing out against the perfect square of the outside of the shape. When I'm happy, I'm going to hit Return. I'm going to go Command D to get rid of the marching ants because they bug me. And then I'm going to use the crop tool to try to get right inside these little black lines. Hit Return when I'm happy. Image Adjustments. Let's try brightness and contrast this time and do it ourselves instead of doing the auto tone thing. I think I'm going to turn the brightness up a little bit on this. Oh yeah, and I'm going to turn the contrast up too. Oh, that's making those colors a little bit brighter. Like that, and I think I might even go down to image adjustments, hue saturation. Let's try that. And that gives us a chance to, either with the master file or with various colors that we can target, it gives us a chance to intensify, saturate, change the hue of some of these colors. So I could say, for example, that I want to work only with the blues. And I could say I want those blues to be more saturated. There don't seem to be too, oh, there we go. Make has suddenly become very saturated, as you see. I was hoping this background would get a little bit more saturated, but I guess there isn't enough blue in it. I could make that, go to the master file though, and make the background a little bit darker, and then make the yellows brighter and more saturated. And I think now I've lost some contrast and I want to go back and heighten the contrast. And still turn that brightness up. So there are many, many adjustments that you can make, in other words, with Photoshop to any sort of complex bitmap file like this. Now again, I'm going to go File and either save, since this is an untitled file, or save as is my habit. And again, I'm going to save this as Sketch 2. Let's make it a JPEG. So I'm saving it in the place where I want to save it. I'm going to make sure it's baseline standard, the largest file I can get. I forgot to check the image size with you on this, although it's bound to be very similar to the first one, 300 and about 2.7, so that's perfect. Now on this file, I did that first shift from the 72 dpi to the 300 dpi on the master file on this whole tight rough thing at the beginning. I could also have broken this up into its 5 separate pieces. Then I would have had to do the image size thing, changing the resolution and the dimensions on each of my 5 little JPEGs. It would have been a little bit more work, but exactly the same effect. I hope this helps. And remember that when you save these, you are going to be saving them to a folder where you will have to be retrieving them more than once, depending on how fast you put your InDesign file together. You'll first be linking these files to InDesign, and then you will be embedding the links when you're all done assembling your InDesign template. So you'll need these files not only to submit to the assignment and to the discussion, but also to link and then to embed in your InDesign document next week. So it's very, very important that you save these files in a place that you remember and where you won't need to move them after you've already given InDesign their address. Okay? Have fun with this, and I can't wait to see your tight roughs.